At 5:47 in the morning, on August 8, 1941, Natalia Volkov crouched behind a stack of rubble in Belyaevka, Ukraine, watching a German sniper prepare to kill the Soviet soldier hiding 40 meters to her left. 24 years old, history student, 4 months in the Red Army, 0 confirmed kills, 309 to go. The Wehrmacht had sent 3 full divisions to take Odessa, 150,000 German soldiers advancing across the Ukrainian steppe. Soviet forces were outnumbered 3-1, and Natalia had just volunteered to become a sniper in a unit that was losing soldiers faster than they could train them. She'd been on the front lines for 6 hours, no sleep, no food, just her Mosin Nagant rifle, 40 rounds of ammunition, and a fury wrapped in ice-cold determination. Her university in Kiev had been bombed 11 days earlier, 73 students killed in the first wave. Her best friend Irina died in the library when fire consumed the building. Irina couldn't get out. The windows were barred. The doors had jammed from the blast. Natalia had been in the dormitory when the bombs fell. She heard Irina screaming. She couldn't reach her. Professor Anatoly Belov was buried under the rubble for 2 hours before they pulled his body out. He'd taught Natalia about the Napoleonic Wars, about how empires fell when they underestimated the will of ordinary people to resist. He died in a classroom, covering 3 students with his own body. All 4 died anyway. Natalia enlisted the next morning. The recruiting officer told her to become a nurse. Women belonged in medical units, not infantry. Combat was for men. Women couldn't handle the blood, the screams, the death. Natalia told him she'd been shooting since she was 14. Marksman scores in youth shooting club, top tier in regional competitions. The officer laughed, said shooting targets wasn't combat. Combat was different. Combat was real. Natalia told him to test her. The officer gave her a rifle, pointed at a fence post 100 meters away. 5 rounds. Prove it. She put all 5 through the center. Tight grouping. No wasted shots. The officer stopped laughing. She was assigned to the 25th Rifle Division as a sniper. That was 4 months ago. Now she was in Ukraine, watching Germans kill her comrades, and she hadn't taken her first shot yet. The German sniper was 280 meters away, positioned behind a destroyed farmhouse wall. Natalia could see his helmet through a crack in the masonry. He was tracking the Soviet soldier, waiting for him to move, waiting for the perfect shot. The Soviet soldier was Sergeant Dmitry Orlov, 32 years old, married, 2 children. Natalia had met him yesterday. He'd shared his bread with her when she hadn't eaten in 18 hours. A simple gesture, a piece of black bread and some dried fish. He hadn't asked questions, just saw she was hungry and shared what he had. Now he was about to die because he didn't know a German was aiming at him. Natalia raised her rifle. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was controlled. Her instructor's voice echoed in her head, words from training, words she'd heard 100 times. Don't think about killing, think about solving a problem. Distance, wind, target movement. 280 meters. Light crosswind from the west. Target, stationary. She adjusted for windage, settled the crosshairs on the crack where the German's helmet showed. Her finger touched the trigger. This was the moment that would define everything. Either she could kill, or she couldn't. Either she was a soldier, or she was a student pretending to be one. She squeezed. The Mosin Nagant kicked against her shoulder. The sound cracked across the battlefield. Through her scope, she saw the German's helmet jerk backward, then disappear. Orlov looked around, confused. Didn't know what had just happened. Didn't know he'd been seconds from death. Didn't know a 24-year-old history student had just saved his life. Natalia chambered another round, scanned for threats. Nothing moved. The German was down, dead or wounded she didn't know. Didn't matter. He wasn't shooting anymore. She'd just killed her first German soldier. She felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, no horror, no pride. Just the immediate question burning in her mind. Where's the next one? Where's the next threat? What do I need to do to survive the next 5 minutes? That emptiness terrified her more than combat ever could. Because if taking a human life felt this easy, what did that make her? 11 days earlier, Natalia had been sitting in Professor Belov's lecture hall, taking notes on the Battle of Borodino, how Napoleon had thrown everything at the Russian lines, how the Russians had held despite overwhelming firepower, how wars are won, not by the side with more guns, but by the side willing to sacrifice more. Professor Belov had a way of making history feel immediate, like you were standing on those fields, watching men die for inches of ground. He didn't romanticize war, he showed it as it was. Brutal, wasteful, necessary. The bombs fell at 11:43 in the morning. No warning, no air raid sirens, just the sudden scream of aircraft engines and then the world exploding. Natalia was in the dormitory, 3rd floor. She'd skipped Belov's morning lecture to study for examinations. The first blast threw her against the wall. The second shattered every window in the building, glass everywhere, the walls shaking, the floor buckling. She ran to the window, saw the university burning, saw the library engulfed in flames, saw students running, screaming, dying, saw bodies in the courtyard, saw pieces of bodies, saw things she would spend the rest of her life trying to forget. She heard Irina screaming, knew her friend was in the library, knew she had to get to her, ran down the stairs, across the courtyard, through smoke so thick she couldn't see 3 meters ahead. The heat was intense, like standing next to an open furnace. The library entrance was blocked, rubble, burning timber, no way through. She tried the side entrance, same thing, tried the back. The entire structure was collapsing. She could hear Irina inside, screaming, begging, calling Natalia's name. And then the screaming stopped. Natalia stood there in the smoke and the heat and the chaos. Stood there knowing her best friend had just burned to death. Stood there knowing there was nothing she could have done. Stood there feeling the weight of helplessness crush down on her. 73 students died that day. 12 professors, 4 groundskeepers, 1 librarian. 90 people who'd been alive at breakfast were corpses by lunch. The Germans were destroying everything. Not just military targets, universities, hospitals, schools. They were trying to erase an entire culture, turn the Soviet Union into a vassal state where education was forbidden and resistance was crushed. Natalia walked to the recruiting station the next morning, still covered in soot, still smelling of smoke, still hearing Irina's screams in her head. The officer at the desk looked at her like she was insane. A young woman, a student, wanting to enlist in the infantry. Ridiculous. She didn't argue, didn't plead, just asked for a rifle and a target. When she put 5 rounds through the fence post at 100 meters, the officer's expression changed from condescension to calculation, changed from dismissal to possibility. He assigned her to the 25th Rifle Division, sniper training, 6 weeks of instruction, then deployment to Ukraine, then combat, then everything that came after. Lieutenant Katya Sokolova was everything Natalia wanted to become. 28 years old, 8 months of combat experience, 47 confirmed kills, precise, professional, perfect. Katya had been a schoolteacher before the war, mathematics. She approached sniping the same way she'd approached teaching. Break the problem into steps, follow the procedure, get the correct answer, every time. She taught Natalia the Soviet sniper doctrine on the 3rd day of training. Never expose your position, Katya said. They were in a bombed-out apartment building outside Odessa, practicing movement patterns, learning how to think like prey. Concealment is survival, exposure is death. Remember that. Write it on your soul. Natalia nodded, took notes, absorbed every word. Maximum 3 shots from the same location, Katya continued. After 3 shots you move. Doesn't matter if you have more targets. Doesn't matter if the position is perfect. 3 shots maximum. Then you relocate. Why 3? Natalia asked. Because that's how long it takes German counter-sniper units to triangulate your position. First shot, they hear it. Second shot, they narrow the search area. Third shot, they know exactly where you are. If you're still there for a 4th shot, you're dead. Katya moved through the apartment like a ghost, showed Natalia how to use shadows, how to position yourself so the light never caught your scope, how to memorize exit routes before you ever fired a shot. Always have a way out, Katya said. Primary exit, secondary exit, tertiary if possible. Never trap yourself in a position with only one escape route. The moment you fire, you assume the enemy knows where you are. You assume they're coming. You assume you have 30 seconds to be somewhere else. It was methodical, systematic, safe. Katya had survived 8 months because she followed every rule, never deviated, never improvised, never took unnecessary risks. The Germans are good, Katya said. Their snipers are well-trained, well-equipped, experienced. They've been fighting longer than we have. They've developed tactics specifically to hunt Soviet snipers. If you follow doctrine, you have a chance. If you don't, you die. It's that simple. Natalia trained with 2 other snipers. Corporal Gregor Petrov was 19 years old. 6 weeks of sniper training, 11 confirmed kills in his first month of combat. Eager, hungry to prove himself, talked too much, laughed too loud, reminded Natalia of boys she'd known in university, boys who thought they were invincible, boys who thought war was an adventure. Sergeant Mikhail Volgin was 35, quiet, serious, 63 confirmed kills. He'd been a hunter before the war, tracked wolves in the Urals, said hunting Germans wasn't much different, just bigger stakes, just more personal. The 4 of them operated as a unit. Katya led. Mikhail provided wisdom. Gregor provided enthusiasm. Natalia provided questions. She asked Katya about everything: how to read wind at distance, how to account for temperature changes affecting bullet trajectory, how to identify German sniper positions based on kill patterns, how to stay alive when everything around you was trying to kill you. Katya answered every question with precision, with examples, with the certainty of someone who'd survived by following the rules. The doctrine exists for a reason, Katya said. Every rule was written in blood. Every procedure was developed because someone died doing it wrong. You think you're smarter than the doctrine? You think you can improvise something better? You're wrong. The doctrine keeps you alive. Trust it. Follow it. Live. Natalia believed her. Why wouldn't she? Katya was alive. 47 kills, 8 months of survival. She was proof the doctrine worked. Until August 19th. Katya died following the doctrine perfectly. It was a textbook engagement. Everything by the book. Everything according to procedure. Everything exactly as training had taught them. They were in a bombed-out apartment building on the eastern edge of Belyayevka. German positions 300 meters away. Katya had spent 2 hours studying the terrain, identifying targets, planning her shots, planning her movements, planning her exits. 3rd floor. Excellent sight lines, clear view of German machine gun positions. 2 exit routes carefully mapped. Primary, stairs to 2nd floor, across to adjacent building, down to street level. Secondary, window descent to 2nd floor balcony, drop to ground, sprint to rubble pile with cover. Katya set up her position exactly as doctrine required. Scope angled to avoid light reflection. Body positioned for quick movement. Rifle braced for stability. Exit routes memorized. Everything perfect. She engaged a German machine gun crew at 320 meters. 1 shot, 1 kill. The gunner dropped. The crew scattered. Katya immediately moved to her secondary position on the 2nd floor. Didn't wait to confirm the kill. Didn't take a second shot. Followed procedure. Relocated. Reset. 20 minutes later, she engaged a German officer at 280 meters. Clean kill. The officer went down. German soldiers rushed to his position. Katya started moving to her tertiary position on the ground floor. Down the stairs. Weapon ready. Moving fast but careful. Everything by the book. The German sniper shot her through the stairwell window. Single shot to the chest. She died before she hit the floor. Natalia was 1 floor below. She heard the shot, heard Katya fall, heard the distant sound of Germans celebrating. They knew they'd killed a Soviet sniper. Natalia crawled to Katya's body, checked for pulse. Nothing. Chest wound, center mass, instant death. Katya's eyes were still open, staring at nothing. Her rifle was still in her hands. She died doing exactly what she was supposed to do. The German sniper had been tracking her, watched her first shot, predicted her movement pattern based on Soviet doctrine, positioned himself to intercept her relocation route, waited for her to appear in the stairwell window, took the shot, killed her. Katya had followed every rule, done everything right, moved exactly when doctrine said to move, used the exact exit route procedure required, and died because of it. Because the Germans knew the doctrine too. They'd captured Soviet snipers, interrogated them, studied their tactics, learned their patterns, and now they were using that knowledge to hunt Soviet snipers like animals. Later, through interrogation of a captured German soldier, Natalia learned the sniper's name: Hauptmann Klaus Richter, Wehrmacht counter-sniper specialist. 89 confirmed kills, mostly Soviet marksmen. He didn't hunt regular soldiers, he hunted Soviet snipers specifically, studied their behavior, predicted their movements, killed them when they followed procedure. Klaus's pattern was consistent. He waited for Soviet snipers to engage, tracked their positions, anticipated their movements based on doctrine, then killed them during relocation. Simple, effective, deadly. If you followed the rules, you were predictable. If you were predictable, Klaus could anticipate you. If he could anticipate you, you were dead. Natalia sat with Katya's body for 10 minutes, just sat there, looking at the woman who'd taught her everything. The woman who'd survived 8 months by being perfect. The woman who died because perfection wasn't enough. Gregor Petrov died on August 27th, 19 years old, 11 confirmed kills, 6 weeks as a sniper. Good kid, eager, wanted to make his mother proud, wanted to kill Germans, wanted to survive long enough to go home. He'd set up in a drainage ditch 400 meters from German lines. Perfect concealment, good sight lines, textbook positioning. He engaged a German patrol at dawn. 2 shots, 2 kills. Germans scattered, took cover. Gregor followed doctrine, stayed low, waited 15 minutes, prepared to move to his secondary position. A German artillery shell landed directly in his ditch. Obliteration kill, nothing left to bury. The artillery crew had called in fire based on where they estimated the sniper was hiding. Standard counter-sniper tactic: observe the shot, estimate position, saturate the area with explosives. Gregor's concealment was perfect. His shot placement was excellent. His adherence to doctrine was flawless. He died anyway because the Germans knew exactly how Soviet snipers operated. They knew Soviet snipers would use terrain for concealment, knew they'd shoot from positions with good sight lines, knew they'd stay in place for at least 10 to 15 minutes before relocating. So they just saturated likely positions with artillery. Didn't need to see the sniper, didn't need to locate him precisely, just needed to know the general area and drop enough explosives to kill anything within 50 meters. Natalia didn't witness Gregor's death. She was 200 meters away, heard the artillery impact, saw the explosion, knew immediately what had happened, crawled to the position an hour later, found pieces of his rifle, found his ammunition pouch, found nothing else worth recovering. Mikhail Volgin died on September 2nd, 35 years old, 63 confirmed kills, experienced, smart, careful. He'd survived because he thought like a predator, anticipated danger, moved like smoke. Klaus Richter shot in through cover that Mikhail thought was solid. Mikhail had positioned himself behind a sheet of corrugated metal, thought it would stop rifle rounds. It didn't. Klaus used armor-piercing ammunition, went through the metal like it was paper, killed Mikhail instantly. Natalia found his body that evening, single shot through the chest. Entry wound, no exit wound. The bullet had tumbled inside him, destroyed his heart and lungs. He'd died fast, probably didn't even know he'd been hit. In his pocket, Natalia found a photograph. Mikhail's wife and 2 daughters, standing in front of a small house somewhere in the Urals, all 3 smiling. Mikhail had shown her that photograph once, told her their names, told her about teaching his daughters to track deer, told her he was going to take them hunting after the war. Now they'd get a letter. Now they'd get condolences. Now they'd get a folded flag and a pension that wouldn't feed them through winter. 4 more snipers died over the next 6 weeks. Different circumstances, same result. All of them followed doctrine. All of them died because they were predictable. By the end of September, Natalia had watched 7 snipers die, 7 good soldiers, 7 people who'd done everything right, 7 corpses that proved the doctrine was a death sentence. German counter-sniper units were too good.
They knew Soviet tactics. They knew Soviet positioning preferences. They knew Soviet movement patterns. They'd systematized killing Soviet snipers, turned it into a formula. Soviet snipers fought defensively, waited for targets, took shots when opportunities appeared, followed doctrine, never initiated, never controlled the engagement, never made the Germans react to them. German snipers, especially the experienced ones like Klaus Richter, hunted actively. They didn't wait for targets, they created them. They forced Soviet snipers to expose themselves, then killed them during the exposure. The dynamic was wrong. Soviet snipers were prey, German snipers were predators. And prey didn't win by following rules. Prey won by becoming something the predator didn't expect. Natalia needed to reverse that dynamic. Stop being prey, become predator. But Soviet doctrine was explicit. Concealment is survival. Exposure is death. Never compromise your position. Never give the enemy a target. The doctrine made sense in theory. In practice, it was killing everyone who followed it. 7 people, 7 corpses, 7 lessons written in blood. Natalia sat in a ruined cellar on September 3rd, thinking about survival. The equation was simple. Following doctrine equals predictability. Predictability equals death. Therefore, following doctrine equals death. The logical conclusion was obvious. Illegal. Insane. Court-martial worthy if anyone found out. She would do the opposite. She would expose herself deliberately, make herself visible, draw fire, then kill whoever shot at her. It violated every principle of sniper warfare. It would probably get her killed. But 7 snipers were dead following the rules, and Natalia refused to be the 8th. The technique would require precision timing, perfect positioning, absolute nerve, and a willingness to bet her life on 3 seconds of reaction time. She would set up 2 nests, not 1, primary and secondary, but only 4 to 6 meters apart, close enough that she could move between them in under 3 seconds. She'd place a decoy in the primary nest, a helmet on a stick, a spare sleeve stuffed with straw, anything that looked like a person from 300 meters away. She'd hide in the secondary nest, watching, rifle pre-aimed at the most likely German sniper position. When a German sniper shot at the decoy, the muzzle flash would give away their position. Natalia would have 2 to 4 seconds before they realized the decoy was fake. In those seconds, she'd acquire the target, aim, fire, 1 shot. If she missed, the German would know her real position. She'd be dead. If she hit, she'd move immediately, reset the trap, do it again. The plan was suicidal. Soviet command would court-martial her if they found out. Exposing a position deliberately, even a fake one, was tactical insanity. But Natalia had watched too many friends die following doctrine. She tested the technique on September 3rd, 1941. Early morning. German lines were 340 meters away. She set up in a ruined cellar near the front line, 2 shooting positions, one with a helmet propped on debris, positioned to look like a sniper observing German positions. She waited in the secondary position 5 meters to the right, completely concealed. Her rifle was aimed at the area where a German counter-sniper would most likely position himself. 45 minutes passed. Nothing moved. Natalia's muscles ached from staying motionless. Her eyes watered from staring through the scope. Insects crawled across her hands. She didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't adjust position. At 6:17 in the morning, a shot cracked across no man's land. The helmet in her primary nest jerked backward. Someone had taken the bait. Natalia scanned the German lines. There, 320 meters away, a muzzle flash, a figure shifting position behind a brick wall. She had 3 seconds, maybe 4 if she was lucky. Her crosshairs settled on the figure. She couldn't see details, just a shape, just a target. She fired. The figure dropped. Natalia didn't wait to confirm.
She abandoned both positions, moved 40 meters west, set up in a different building. Through her scope, she watched the brick wall where the German had been. 2 German soldiers appeared, dragging a body. Confirmed kill. The technique worked. Natalia felt something she hadn't felt since Katya died. Not satisfaction, not pride, just the cold certainty that she'd found a way to survive, a way to fight back, a way to make the Germans afraid. She'd just violated every rule in the Soviet sniper manual. She'd exposed a position, she'd made herself a target, she'd done everything doctrine said would get her killed. And she'd won. 7 snipers had died following the rules. Natalia had survived by breaking.
Better to die on her terms than following someone else's doctrine to a predictable grave. She chambered another round, scanned for new targets, calculated her next position. The Germans thought they were hunting Soviet snipers. They thought they'd systematized the kill. They thought they understood the pattern. They were wrong. Because Natalia Volkov had just changed the rules, and the Germans were about to discover what it felt like to be prey. Over the next 6 weeks, Natalia Volkov refined her method into something that would change sniper warfare forever. She studied Klaus Richter the way a wolf studies a hunter. Not the man himself, she'd never seen him, would never meet him except through a scope, but his work, his patterns, his preferences, his psychology. Every kill attributed to the German counter-sniper operating in the sector, she documented. Position, time of day, weather conditions, target selection, method. She built a profile in her mind, not of a monster, not of an enemy, of a professional doing his job with terrifying competence. Klaus preferred elevated positions, 2nd floor, 3rd floor, never the ground level, never the basement positions that seemed safest. He'd learned that Soviet artillery targeted ground-level positions first, standard doctrine. Flatten everything at street level with the first barrage, then work upward. Klaus had adapted, stayed high, stayed patient, let the Soviets waste ammunition on empty buildings while he watched from above, picking targets, planning kills. He positioned himself with the sun at his back when possible. Morning shoots facing east, evening shoots facing west, never silhouetted against bright sky, never giving Soviet snipers that telltale outline that made for easy identification. He understood how light worked, how shadows concealed, how Soviet snipers were trained to look for shapes against sky. He rarely changed positions during daylight, too risky, too much exposure during movement. Klaus would set up before dawn, when darkness provided concealment for relocation, would operate until mid-morning, taking whatever shots presented themselves, then stay motionless until darkness allowed safe movement again. Patience was his weapon as much as his Mauser. Patience and discipline, and absolute adherence to professional methodology. Natalia used all of this against him. She placed her decoys where they'd be visible from elevated German positions, set them at angles that required the shooter to be above ground level to see them, made them tempting targets for someone watching from a second-story window or a bombed-out 3rd floor, created opportunities that played directly into Klaus's preferred tactics. She timed her operations for when the sun would be in German snipers' eyes, not hers. Early morning with the sun rising behind Soviet lines, casting long shadows that concealed her secondary positions. Late afternoon with the sun setting behind Soviet positions, creating glare that made it hard for Germans to see clearly. Let the glare work for her instead of against her. Used the environment as a weapon. She built her secondary nests at ground level, the unexpected position, the place German snipers thought was too dangerous because Soviet artillery targeted ground-level positions. The place Klaus would never look because his experience said Soviet snipers valued elevation. She violated Soviet doctrine to exploit German expectations of Soviet doctrine, used their knowledge against them. Every engagement became chess. The decoy was her opening move, establishing a position, creating a threat. The Germans' shot was their response, revealing their location, committing to action. Her kill shot was checkmate, ending the game before the opponent understood they'd been playing. And she was getting better at the game every day.
The dual position trap evolved through trial and error. She learned exactly how long to wait. 45 minutes minimum before expecting a shot. Sometimes an hour. Sometimes 90 minutes. German snipers were patient. They wouldn't shoot at the first target they saw. They'd watch, make sure it was real, make sure it wasn't a trap, make sure the reward was worth the risk of exposure. Only when they were convinced, only when they'd observed long enough to feel certain, would they take the shot. Natalia learned to be more patient than they were, learned to wait until waiting became almost unbearable, learned that the urge to move, to adjust position, to do something, anything, was the enemy. Learned that patience was a weapon, that the sniper who could wait longest usually lived longest. She learned how to position decoys for maximum realism. Not just a helmet on a stick, that was too obvious from close range, too fake, too simple. She'd stuff a jacket with straw, creating bulk that suggested a human torso, position it at an angle that suggested someone was leaning out to observe. Add a canteen hanging from the belt. A rifle barrel made from a stick, positioned to look like someone was aiming. Small details that sold the illusion. Details that made German snipers think they'd found a real target instead of recognizing a trap. She learned to predict exactly where German snipers would set up based on her decoy's position. If the decoy was visible from 8 different buildings, the experienced sniper would choose the one with the best combination of cover and escape routes. Not the closest building, not the highest building, the one that offered the best tactical advantage. Natalia would analyze the terrain from the German perspective. Think like Klaus thought. Choose the position Klaus would choose. Then pre-aim her rifle at that exact window, that exact corner, that exact shadow where a patient man with a scoped rifle would hide. By October, she had 64 confirmed kills. 18 of them were German snipers. The numbers mattered. Soviet command tracked kills obsessively, required proof, required verification. Every kill needed a witness or recovered enemy documents. Propaganda required accuracy, required proof that could withstand scrutiny, required evidence. Natalia provided both. Other Soviet soldiers watched her work, confirmed her shots, retrieved German identification papers from the bodies, documented everything, built an unassailable record. 18 enemy snipers dead meant 18 fewer threats to Soviet forces, meant 18 families in Germany getting letters about sons who wouldn't come home, meant 18 rifles that would never fire again, meant 18 positions that would remain empty, 18 fewer hunters stalking Soviet soldiers. But the numbers did something else, something more important than statistics. They got attention. Soviet command noticed. Started hearing reports about a female sniper in the Belyaevka sector who was killing German snipers at an unprecedented rate. Started paying attention to her methods. Started wondering if her tactics could be taught to others. German command noticed. Started hearing reports about a Soviet sniper who used decoys, who killed experienced German marksmen, who couldn't be located, who couldn't be killed. Started putting bounties on her head. And that's when everything changed. The German bounty started at 100 Reichsmarks. Some Wehrmacht officer, frustrated by losses, put a price on the head of the Soviet sniper operating in the Belyaevka sector. 100 Reichsmarks for confirmed kill. Good money for a soldier. A week's worth of hot meals and decent wine. Enough to make it worth taking risks. Nobody collected. The bounty went up to 500 Reichsmarks. Still nobody collected. Because the Germans who tried to kill Natalia ended up dead themselves. Word spread through Wehrmacht units. Soviet sniper in Belyaevka, female according to interrogated prisoners, uses decoys, shoots back faster than you can relocate, kills experienced snipers, has killed at least a dozen German marksmen, avoid, if possible, not worth the risk. The bounty went up to 1,000 Reichsmarks. 1,000 Reichsmarks was officers' pay for 2 months. That was serious money. That was a bounty reserved for partisan leaders and saboteurs, for high-value targets whose elimination would significantly impact Soviet operations, not for a single sniper. But Natalia wasn't a single sniper anymore. She was becoming something else, something the Germans couldn't categorize, couldn't predict, couldn't eliminate using standard tactics. She was becoming a psychological threat as much as a physical one. German propaganda broadcasts started mentioning her. Not by name, they didn't know her name yet. Soviet prisoners weren't talking.
But they talked about the devil woman of Belyaevka, the Soviet sniper who couldn't be real, who must be Soviet propaganda. Multiple snipers using the same tactics, probably. No single person could kill that many trained German soldiers, certainly not a woman. The Red Army claims a female sniper has killed 18 German marksmen, the propaganda broadcast said. Transmitted in German for Wehrmacht morale. Transmitted in Russian for Soviet civilians. This is obvious fabrication, desperation propaganda from a collapsing military. No woman has the physical capability or mental fortitude for sustained combat operations. The claims are mathematically impossible and tactically absurd. Soviet propaganda attempting to inspire resistance through fabricated heroism. Soviet soldiers translated the broadcasts for Natalia, told her what the Germans were saying, expected her to be angry, expected outrage at being called a lie, at having her kills dismissed, at being denied the recognition she'd earned in blood. She laughed. Laughed because their denial proved how effective she was. Laughed because fear made people stupid, made them reject evidence that contradicted their worldview, made them claim impossibility in the face of documented fact. Laughed because every broadcast that claimed she didn't exist made German snipers more afraid of the ghost they couldn't believe in. Let them think I'm a myth, she said. Myths are harder to kill than women. Myths don't bleed. Myths don't die. Let them be afraid of a myth. She started leaving signatures, small things, deliberate messages, psychological warfare. After a kill, before relocating, she'd leave a piece of red ribbon tied near her position. Not at the position, near it, 15 or 20 meters away. Somewhere German recovery teams would find it when they retrieved their dead. A calling card, a message, proof that she'd been there. On one German sniper's body, she left a playing card, Queen of Spades, placed it on his chest where his comrades would see it when they found him. The Red Queen. Death in a deck of cards, a taunt, a signature, a way of saying, I was here, I killed this man, and I'll kill more. Soviet newspapers heard about it, ran stories about Lady Death, about the Red Queen, who taunted German snipers before killing them, about the woman who made the Wehrmacht afraid, about the history student from Kiev who'd become the deadliest female combatant in Soviet military history. Natalia never confirmed or denied the stories, never spoke to reporters, never sought publicity, let Soviet propaganda make her into whatever they needed her to be. Because every exaggerated story made the Germans more nervous. Every propaganda piece made them second-guess their tactics. Every broadcast claiming she didn't exist made the soldiers who'd seen their friends die by her rifle question what was real. And somewhere in the ruins of Sevastopol, Klaus Richter heard about the railway junction, heard about another German sniper killed by the same Soviet, heard about the decoy tactic, heard about the dual position trap, and he started preparing. On October 12th, Lieutenant Andrei Sokolov came to Natalia with a problem that was destroying his command. Andrei was 30 years old, career officer, professional soldier from a military family, good man, competent leader, cared about his soldiers in a way that made them willing to follow him into situations that would otherwise seem suicidal. His platoon had lost 9 men in 4 days, not to artillery, not to machine gun fire, not to mortars or grenades or any of the normal ways soldiers died, to a single German sniper operating near the railway junction east of the city. The sniper was systematically decapitating Soviet command structure, shot officers, radio operators, machine gunners, forward observers, anyone important, anyone whose death would disrupt operations, anyone whose loss would create chaos. He never shot regular infantry, never wasted ammunition on targets that didn't matter strategically. He hunted leadership, hunted communications, hunted the soldiers who made the Red Army function as a coordinated fighting force. Andrei's platoon was paralyzed,
Soldiers refused to move during daylight. Officers wouldn't give orders in the open. Radio operators hid in bunkers and couldn't maintain contact with adjacent units. Forward observers wouldn't observe forward. The entire platoon had stopped functioning as a combat-effective force. 40 men rendered useless by one German with a rifle. One sniper had neutralized 40 Soviet soldiers without firing 40 shots. The mathematics of force multiplication at its most brutal. "I need your help," Andrei said. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes from too many nights without sleep, hands shaking slightly from too much coffee and too much stress. Uniform wrinkled, hadn't changed in days. "My men are terrified. They think he sees everything. They think he's supernatural. They think he can shoot through walls. They think he knows where everyone is at all times." "Can he?" Natalia asked. Andrei pulled out a map, pointed to kill locations. "I don't know. Maybe. He killed my radio operator through a gap in sandbags I didn't think was wide enough for a bullet. Killed my sergeant through a window that wasn't even facing German lines. Killed my forward observer while he was lying flat in a trench that should have provided complete cover. Either he can shoot through walls, or he's so good he might as well be able to." "He's good," Natalia said, studying the map. The kills formed a pattern, all within a specific sector, all targeting specific types of soldiers. Professional work. "He's better than good. He's killing us, and I can't stop him." Andrei's frustration was evident, the helplessness of a commander watching his men die and being unable to protect them. "I've tried counter-battery fire, tried artillery saturation, tried sending patrols to locate him. Nothing works. He shoots once, then vanishes. By the time we respond, he's gone. By the time we saturate the area with artillery, he's already relocated. He's always one step ahead." Andrei pulled out a bottle of vodka. Decent stuff. Officer's ration. Premium brand reserved for senior commanders. "This is yours if you can kill him. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what you need. I don't care what rules you break. Just make it stop. Make my men able to function again. Make them stop being afraid." Natalia didn't take the vodka, didn't want payment, didn't want reward. The chance to kill another German sniper was payment enough. Another opportunity to prove her method worked. Another data point in the equation she was solving. Another opportunity to make Germans afraid instead of making Soviets afraid. "I'll do it," she said. "Keep your vodka. I'm doing this for your men." She spent 2 days studying the railway junction, 2 full days of reconnaissance, watching from 800 meters away with binoculars, never getting close, never exposing herself, just watching, sketching maps, taking notes, building understanding. She noted every building with sightlines to Soviet positions, counted windows, measured distances using landmarks, recorded wind patterns and how they changed throughout the day, noted how shadows moved, how light changed, how terrain features created concealment. The German was smart, never shot from the same place twice, never established a pattern, never gave Soviet forces anything to predict, never created a routine that could be exploited. But he had to shoot, and when he shot, he had to be somewhere. Physics and geometry limited his options. There were only so many positions that provided the necessary sightlines and concealment. Natalia just had to figure out which options he preferred. She identified 11 possible positions: buildings with intact upper floors, ruins with good concealment, structures that offered multiple escape routes, positions that provided tactical advantage without excessive exposure. 11 possibilities. Too many to watch simultaneously, too many to predict with certainty. She needed to narrow it down, needed to force him to reveal himself. She set up 5 meters from where Andrei's men congregated, made a decoy that looked like a Soviet officer, used a real uniform taken from a dead lieutenant, stuffed it properly with straw and rags, positioned binoculars to make it look like someone was observing German lines, added details, a map case, a pistol holster, small touches that sold the authenticity, placed it where it would be visible from 8 of the 11 possible German positions, created a target too tempting to ignore. A Soviet officer observing German positions, high-value target, worth the risk of exposure. Then she hid 12 meters away, rifle aimed at the most likely German location, a partially collapsed water tower that offered clear views of Soviet positions and 3 separate escape routes. If she was right, the German would be there. If she was wrong, she'd have wasted 2 days, and the German would kill more of Andrei's men, and her reputation would be damaged. She waited. 6:30 in the morning. The sun was rising, creating long shadows, perfect conditions for snipers. The decoy stood in the open. 10 minutes passed. 20, 30, 40. Nothing happened. No shot. No movement. No indication that anyone was watching. Natalia stayed motionless, ignored the cramps developing in her legs, ignored the ache in her lower back from holding position, ignored the mosquitoes biting her neck and arms. Didn't move, didn't adjust position, didn't give in to the urge to shift weight or scratch an itch. Just watched, just waited, just endured. At 7:11, the shot came. The decoy's helmet spun away, the stuffed uniform collapsed, the binoculars clattered to the ground, and Natalia saw the muzzle flash. Not from the water tower, from a destroyed railway boxcar 420 meters away. The German had positioned himself inside the boxcar. Brilliant hiding spot, completely unexpected. Natalia had dismissed it as too exposed, too vulnerable to Soviet artillery, too obvious. But the German had calculated that Soviet forces wouldn't waste shells on a single abandoned boxcar, had calculated that Soviet artillery doctrine said to target buildings and fortify positions, not random rolling stock, had been right until now, had survived by understanding Soviet doctrine better than Soviet snipers did. Natalia adjusted for distance and wind. 420 meters, significant wind from the west, maybe 5 kilometers per hour? Had to account for that. Had to lead the target. The German was moving inside the boxcar. She could see his shape through the open cargo door, could see him pulling back, starting to relocate, understanding something was wrong. She had maybe 5 seconds before he realized the decoy was fake. 5 seconds before he started looking for the person who'd set the trap. 5 seconds before he became unhittable. She fired. Through her scope, she saw the German jerk backward, saw him stumble, saw him grab his shoulder. Hit, but not fatally. Shoulder hit. Maybe upper chest. Enough to wound, but not enough to kill. Not enough to stop him. He was trying to escape, trying to get deeper into the boxcar where she couldn't see him, trying to survive. Natalia chambered another round. Smooth motion, automatic, fired again. The German dropped. This time he stayed down. This time he didn't get up. Andrei's men moved in 40 minutes later. Cautious approach. Rifles ready. Expecting resistance. Expecting the German to still be alive. Expecting a fight. They found him dead inside the boxcar. 2 shots. One through the shoulder that had shattered his collarbone and punctured his lung. One through the head that had ended everything. His logbook was in his pocket. Detailed notes. Names of targets when he knew them. Dates, distances, methods. Kill confirmations. 67 confirmed kills, according to his own meticulous documentation. Professional soldier keeping professional records. Andrei looked at Natalia with something between gratitude and unease. How did you know where he was? I didn't. I forced him to reveal his position. Then I killed him. Andrei shook his head slowly, processing what she'd done, understanding the implications. You make it sound simple. It is simple, just not easy. He tried to give her the vodka again. She refused again. The confirmed kill was payment enough. Number 65.
19 if you only counted snipers.
The numbers kept climbing. The tally kept growing. Each kill was a small victory in a war that seemed unwinnable. Each kill proved her methods worked. Each kill was evidence that breaking the rules could be more effective than following them. Klaus Richter heard about the railway junction 3 days later. He was in Sevastopol by then, had been operating in the southern sector since August. 89 confirmed kills when he'd started in the sector. 94 by late October. 5 more German snipers had survived their encounters with Soviet forces. 5 more had learned what happened when you were predictable, when you followed patterns, when you did what your enemy expected. He developed a system over months of combat. Watch Soviet lines, wait for muzzle flash, estimate position, predict movement based on Soviet doctrine, position himself along likely retreat routes, wait for the Soviet sniper to relocate,
Kill them during movement when they were exposed and vulnerable. Simple, effective, reliable, systematic, professional. Until recently. Until one Soviet sniper started doing everything wrong, started breaking every rule, started exposing positions deliberately, started killing German snipers who thought they were the hunters, started creating a pattern of unpredictability that was impossible to counter using standard methods. Klaus studied the reports, reviewed every engagement where German snipers had been killed by this particular Soviet, talked to survivors who'd witnessed the kills from a distance, built a profile, created understanding. The Soviet sniper used decoys, always, created fake positions to draw fire, hid nearby in secondary positions, shot back within seconds of the decoy being hit, relocated immediately after firing, never stayed in position long enough to be targeted, never established a routine, never became predictable. The Soviet sniper preferred ground-level secondary positions. Unexpected. Contrary to Soviet doctrine, which emphasized elevation. Contrary to common sense, which said elevation provided advantage. But effective because German snipers looked for elevated Soviet positions and ignored street level. Used German expectations against them. The Soviet sniper was patient, would wait hours for the perfect moment, wouldn't take low percentage shots, only fired when success was near guaranteed, understood that patience was a weapon, that the sniper who waited longest usually lived longest. Most importantly, the Soviet sniper was adapting, learning, getting better. The early kills showed hesitation, imperfect positioning, amateur mistakes. The recent kills showed mastery, evolution, refinement. Someone who turned an experimental tactic into a refined system. Someone who learned from every engagement. Someone who improved constantly. Klaus recognized excellence when he saw it. This wasn't a lucky amateur. This was a professional. Someone who'd studied German counter-sniper tactics and developed specific countermeasures. Someone who thought strategically instead of reactively. Someone who understood that warfare was ultimately about psychology as much as marksmanship. To his fellow German snipers, Klaus said something that made them uncomfortable. She's not fighting the way they taught her. She's fighting the way we taught her. We killed enough Soviet snipers that one of them learned from it, learned that their doctrine was death, learned to think like us, learned our patterns and our methods, and now she's using our tactics against us. She's become what we are, a hunter who understands the prey because she used to be prey. So, how do we kill her? Sergeant Wilhelm asked. Young sniper, 23 years old, 31 confirmed kills. Good soldier, not great yet but learning. The same way she kills us, Klaus said. Make her think she's hunting me. Make her set up her trap. Make her believe she's in control. Then kill her when she takes the shot. Use her own method against her. Become what she is, someone who breaks the expected pattern. Klaus began planning, studying Sevastopol's terrain with fresh eyes, looking for the perfect position, the perfect bait, the perfect trap, thinking like his opponent thought, trying to predict what she'd predict, playing chess against someone who'd proven she understood the game. He would use her own method against her, create a target so tempting she couldn't resist, make her expose herself to take the shot, make her believe she was hunting him, then kill her before she could relocate, turn her innovation into her death sentence. It would require patience. It would require perfect positioning. It would require absolute nerve. It would require becoming unpredictable in exactly the way she'd become unpredictable. But Klaus Richter had all of these things, had developed them over months of hunting Soviet snipers, had refined them through 94 confirmed kills, had proven them through survival when lesser snipers died, and he was about to put them to the ultimate test. In early November, Soviet officers started dying in Sevastopol at an alarming rate. 11 dead in 3 days, all shot between 5:45 and 7:30 in the morning. All instant kills,
All perfect placement, headshots, chest shots, precision work that showed extensive training and experience. No wounded, no survivors, no near misses, just dead officers and chaos in Soviet command structure. The pattern was clear to anyone paying attention. Someone was systematically destroying Soviet command structure, killing lieutenants who led platoons, captains who commanded companies, majors who coordinated operations, anyone who gave orders, anyone who coordinated operations, anyone whose death would create confusion and chaos.
Major Ivan Chernov summoned Natalia to headquarters on November 7th. His office was in a basement, reinforced concrete, protected from artillery, map tables covered with acetate overlays showing unit positions, radio equipment crackling with reports from the front, the controlled chaos of command in wartime. He showed her photographs of the dead, taken for documentation purposes, entry wounds, perfect precision, clinical execution, professional work from a professional killer. "This is different from the others," Chernov said. He looked worried, looked old. Command aged people rapidly. The weight of responsibility for lives, the knowledge that your decisions determined who lived and who died. Dark bags under his eyes, uniform wrinkled from sleeping in his office. The stress was visible. "The other German snipers we've faced were good, competent, professional. This one is exceptional. He's killing our leadership faster than we can replace them." Officers are afraid to show themselves. Sergeants won't give orders in the open. The entire command structure is paralyzed. We're losing combat effectiveness without losing combat. He spread a map on the table, marked locations where officers had died. Red X marks, 11 of them, all within a 400-meter radius, all from slightly different directions. Northeast one day, southwest the next, northwest after that. The German was mobile, changing positions constantly, never shooting from the same place twice, never establishing a pattern that could be exploited. "You have 48 hours, Chernov said. His voice was strained, under pressure from higher command, under pressure from the situation, under pressure from the knowledge that failure meant Soviet forces would have to abandon this sector. If you can't kill him in 48 hours, we'll have to pull back from this sector. We can't maintain operations if our officers won't lead. We can't coordinate if our communication is disrupted. We can't fight effectively if our command structure is paralyzed. This one German is worth a company of infantry in terms of combat effectiveness denial. Find him, kill him, do whatever you have to do. 48 hours, 2 days. Find the best German sniper in Sevastopol and kill him before Soviet forces collapsed, before the sector fell, before German forces broke through and threatened the entire defensive line." Natalia studied the photographs, studied the map, studied the pattern, looking for something, anything, some clue about who this German was, how he thought, how he operated. The German shot in early morning. Why? Better light? Routine targets? Wind conditions? Tactical advantage? She thought about it for hours, sat in the corner of Chernov's office, stared at the map, ran scenarios in her mind. Early morning meant Soviet officers were visible, moving between positions, checking defenses, giving orders, coordinating operations. First light meant soldiers were tired from night watch, less alert, slower to react. Guards were changing shifts, attention was divided, routines were happening. The German was hunting during shift change. That meant he was watching specific locations at specific times, knew Soviet routines, had studied them extensively, had documented patterns, was patient enough to wait for the perfect moment, professional enough to only take high-percentage shots. Everything about this German suggested Klaus Richter. The precision, the professionalism, the systematic approach, the patience, the targeting selection, the perfect kills. This was the sniper who'd killed Katya, who'd killed Mikhail, who'd killed 19 other Soviet snipers, who'd survived by being better than everyone he'd faced. This was the opponent Natalia had been preparing for without knowing it. The test, the final examination, the moment that would determine whether her tactics worked against the absolute best the Wehrmacht could send, whether breaking doctrine was enough,
whether innovation could defeat experience. 48 hours. 2 days to prepare, 2 days to plan, 2 days to figure out how to kill someone who'd spent months killing people exactly like her. Someone who understood Soviet tactics, someone who anticipated movement, someone who'd turned killing into a systematic science. Natalia looked at the map, looked at the photographs, looked at the pattern, and she started planning something that would either prove she was brilliant or prove she was suicidal. She was going to make herself the bait. Not a helmet, not a stuffed uniform, not a decoy that Klaus might recognize. Herself, her actual body, standing in the open, making herself the most valuable target on the battlefield, making herself irresistible to a German sniper who specialized in killing Soviet leadership. If Klaus took the shot, she'd have maybe 1.5 seconds to react. 1.5 seconds to recognize the shot, to dive, to acquire his position, to fire back, to kill him before he could confirm the hit and relocate. 1.5 seconds between life and death, between victory and becoming another photograph in Chernov's folder of dead officers. 1.5 seconds to prove that a 24-year-old history student from Kiev could beat the best sniper the German army could produce. The odds were brutal, the mathematics were terrifying. But Natalia had learned something over the past 3 months. Learned it from watching 7 friends die. Learned it from killing 65 Germans. Learned it from surviving when doctrine said she should be dead. Sometimes, the only way to win is to risk everything. Sometimes, the only way to kill the hunter is to make yourself the prey. Sometimes, the only equation that works is the one nobody expects you to solve. Natalia Volkov was going to stand in the open and dare Klaus Richter to shoot her. And then, she was going to kill him. Or die trying, but either way the duel was coming. The hunter and the hunted. The professional and the innovator. The man who'd killed 94 people and the woman who'd broken every rule to survive. One of them would walk away from Sevastopol. The other would die there. The mathematics were certain. The equation had only one solution. The only question was, which one of them was better at solving it? Lieutenant Alexei Romanov was the only reason Natalia survived the night of November 7th. Alexei was a reconnaissance officer, 32 years old, veteran of the Odessa siege, where he'd watched his entire company die in 3 days of brutal urban combat. He'd survived when 90% of his unit died. Survived by knowing terrain better than the Germans did, by moving through ruins like smoke, by understanding that in urban warfare, the side that controlled information controlled everything. The side that knew the ground better won. The side that understood sight lines and kill zones and escape routes survived. He knew Sevastopol the way a sailor knows the sea. Every street, every alley, every collapsed building, every shell crater, every position that offered cover, and every position that offered death. He'd walked every meter of the defensive perimeter, had mapped it in his mind, had memorized it until navigating the ruins in pitch darkness was as easy as walking through his childhood home. When Natalia told him she needed to scout the battlefield at night, he didn't question it, didn't ask why, didn't demand explanations, just grabbed his rifle and led the way. Because he understood that some operations required seeing the ground from the enemy's perspective, required understanding sight lines, required thinking like the Germans thought. Walking the perimeter at night was suicide if you didn't know what you were doing. German patrols were active, aggressive, trigger-happy. They shot at anything that moved, anything that made sound, anything that might be a Soviet infiltrator or saboteur. Soviet patrols were just as bad. Nervous kids with rifles who'd kill you before asking for passwords, who assumed anything moving in no man's land was hostile. The space between the lines was where people went to die quietly, where bodies accumulated, where the war was most brutal and most personal. But Natalia needed to see the battlefield from ground level, needed to understand sight lines from Klaus Richter's perspective, needed to know which positions offered the best views of Soviet command areas, needed to think like him if she was going to kill him, needed to predict where he'd set up, where he'd watch from, where he'd take the shot from. They moved through the ruins in complete silence, Alexei in front, moving with the confidence of familiarity,
Natalia 3 meters behind, following his exact path. Hand signals only. No talking, no unnecessary sound, no wasted movement. Just 2 shadows moving through a destroyed city. Just 2 professionals doing dangerous work in the most dangerous place on Earth. The urban landscape was a nightmare of destruction. Collapsed buildings created valleys of rubble 30 meters deep. Places where entire structures had pancaked down on themselves. Shell craters formed artificial trenches, some of them 10 meters across and 5 meters deep. Fires still burned in some sectors, refusing to die despite days without fuel, casting orange light that made shadows dance like living things, making the ruins look like hell itself. The smell was overwhelming. Cordite from constant shelling, burning wood from fires that wouldn't die, decomposing bodies that nobody had time to bury, sewage from broken pipes, the accumulated stench of a city dying by degrees, of a place where the living and the dead existed in the same space, where the boundary between them was thinner than anywhere else on Earth. Alexei stopped every 50 meters, froze in place, listened, watched, used senses honed by months of survival, made sure no German patrols were close enough to hear them breathing, made sure no Soviet sentries would mistake them for infiltrators, made sure they stayed alive long enough to complete the reconnaissance, made sure Natalia would survive the night to face Klaus Richter in the morning. They reached the eastern perimeter at 2:30 in the morning, the darkest part of night, when even the moon seemed to have abandoned this place. From here, Natalia could see the entire Soviet command area, could see where officers gathered for morning briefings, where radio operators set up communications equipment, where observers watched German lines through binoculars, where the routines happened that made Klaus's kills possible. She pulled out a notebook, started sketching by moonlight, drew sight lines, noted distances using landmarks she'd memorized, marked buildings that offered clear views of Soviet positions, built understanding through documentation. 14 possible sniper positions, 14 places where Klaus Richter could set up with good concealment and excellent views. 14 potential locations for the duel that was coming in a few hours. Too many to watch simultaneously, too many to predict with certainty. She needed to narrow it down, needed to make educated guesses based on Klaus's known preferences and the tactical realities of the positions. 3 positions were more likely than the others. A destroyed church with an intact bell tower that offered commanding views. 3rd floor of a partially collapsed apartment building with multiple firing positions. Rooftop of a former school that still had most of its walls providing concealment. All 3 offered perfect views of Soviet command areas. All 3 offered multiple escape routes. All 3 were elevated enough to provide tactical advantage, but not so high that they'd be obvious targets for Soviet artillery. All 3 were positions Klaus Richter might choose, might be watching from right now, might be preparing for tomorrow's kills. Alexei pointed at the church tower, whispered so quietly Natalia almost couldn't hear. That one. If I was German, that's where I'd shoot from. Best sight lines, best cover. 3 different ways out. Perfect sniper nest. Natalia nodded. She agreed. The church tower was the most likely position, the obvious choice, the tactically superior location, which meant it was exactly where Klaus would expect her to look, which meant it might be a trap, or it might be genuine, or it might be both. A position so good that using it despite its obviousness made sense. The only way to know was to force him to shoot first, let him reveal his position, then kill him before he could relocate, before he could disappear into the ruins like he'd done 94 times before, which meant making herself a target, which meant standing in the open where 11 Soviet officers had already died, which meant betting her life on reflexes fast enough to dodge a bullet that moved at 800 meters per second, fast enough to acquire a target in under 2 seconds, fast enough to fire back before Klaus realized his shot had missed. They returned to Soviet lines before dawn, moving even more carefully on the return. German patrols increased activity before sunrise, trying to catch Soviet soldiers moving in darkness, trying to kill people before they could reach safety. Alexei looked at her with concern when they reached friendly positions. You're planning something insane, aren't you?
Probably, Natalia said. Will it work? I don't know. I've never tried it before. Alexei was quiet for a moment, thinking about what she might be planning, thinking about what it would take to kill Klaus Richter, thinking about the risks. Then he said, Katya wouldn't approve. Katya's dead. Fair point. Alexei checked his rifle, made sure it was ready for whatever came next. When you do this insane thing, I'll have a squad ready to clear whatever position he's shooting from. Just make sure you survive long enough for us to reach you. Make sure I don't have to write a letter to your family explaining that you died doing something brave and stupid. Natalia didn't make promises she couldn't keep. Just nodded. Just accepted that in a few hours she'd either be alive or dead. Either Klaus would miss, or she'd be one more photograph in Chernov's folder. One more name on the casualty lists. One more student from Kiev who'd never graduate, never return home, never have a future beyond this war. November 8th, 1941. 5:42 in the morning, the moment everything would be decided. Natalia Volkov stood in the open, wearing an oversized officer's coat, brown wool, too big for her, hanging loose, but recognizable from a distance as an officer's uniform. Standing exactly where Soviet officers normally gathered for morning briefings. Standing in the same spot where a lieutenant had died 3 days ago. Standing where a captain had died yesterday. Standing where a major had died the day before that. Standing where Klaus Richter had proven he could kill with absolute precision. Making herself a target. Making herself irresistible. Making herself the most valuable kill on the battlefield for a German sniper who specialized in killing Soviet leadership. Making herself everything Klaus was hunting for. Her rifle was positioned 4 meters away, hidden behind rubble, pre-aimed at the church bell tower. If she was right about Klaus's position, she'd have time to dive for the rifle, time to grab it, time to fire back. If she was wrong, she'd die before she hit the ground, before she understood what had happened, before she could even regret the decision. 2 seconds, maybe less. 2 seconds to recognize the shot, 2 seconds to dive, 2 seconds to grab the rifle, 2 seconds to acquire the target, 2 seconds to fire, 2 seconds between survival and becoming another photograph in Chernov's folder. She stood there, arms at her sides, relaxed posture, had to look natural, had to look like a real officer surveying the front lines before making decisions, couldn't look like bait, couldn't look staged, couldn't telegraph the trap, had to sell the illusion completely. The wind was cold, November cold in Ukraine, the kind that cut through your coat and made your bones ache, the kind that made you want to move, made you want to generate warmth,
Made staying still almost unbearable.
Dawn was breaking behind Soviet lines, light creeping across the ruins like water flowing, shadows retreating, the world transitioning from night to day, the moment when everything became visible, when concealment failed, when snipers took their shots. 1 minute passed, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Every instinct Natalia possessed screamed at her to take cover. Every survival mechanism honed by 3 months of combat told her she was exposed, vulnerable, stupid, standing in the exact place where officers came to die. Every rational thought said she should move, hide, stop presenting herself as a target, stop being crazy. She didn't move. 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 17 minutes. 17 minutes standing in the open. 17 minutes of being the easiest kill on the battlefield. 17 minutes of waiting for a bullet that might never come or might come any second. 17 minutes of controlling every muscle, every breath, every tiny movement that might reveal the trap. Her heart was pounding. She could hear it, could feel it hammering against her ribs like it wanted to escape, could taste copper in her mouth from adrenaline flooding her system. Sweat ran down her back despite the cold, despite the November wind that should have made her shiver. Her hands trembled slightly, minutely. She forced them still, willed them to stop, had to maintain the illusion, had to look calm, had to look like someone who belonged here, someone who wasn't afraid, someone who was just doing their job. Somewhere in the ruins, Klaus Richter was watching, studying her through his Zeiss scope, studying her posture, her movements, her breathing, deciding if she was real or bait, deciding if the shot was worth the risk, deciding if he should pull the trigger or wait for a safer target. Making calculations, running probabilities, being professional. Natalia counted seconds in her head. 1001,
1002, 1003, keeping her mind occupied, preventing panic, preventing the overwhelming urge to run, to hide, to stop being insane. 500 seconds, 700 seconds, 900 seconds, 1020 seconds of exposure, of vulnerability, of being a target. Was he aiming at her right now? Was his finger on the trigger? Was he calculating wind drift and bullet drop? Was he exhaling slowly, preparing to fire? Or had he seen through the trap? Had he recognized this as bait? Was he repositioning to get a better angle? Was he waiting for her to give up and return to cover so he could shoot her during movement? The mathematics became meaningless. The equation had too many variables, too many unknowns, too many possibilities. All she could do was stand there and wait, and hope that when the shot came, she'd be fast enough to survive it. Hope that all the training mattered. Hope that desperation and innovation and breaking every rule would be enough. At 5:59 in the morning, the shot came. Natalia heard it before she felt it. The distinctive crack of a Mauser K98. Different sound from a Mosin Nagant, higher pitched, sharper, thinner. The sound she'd learned to recognize over 3 months of combat. The sound that meant German sniper. The sound that meant someone was trying to kill you. The bullet passed centimeters from her head. So close, she felt the air displacement, felt the pressure wave, felt the heat of the round as it screamed past her skull at 800 meters per second. So close it parted her hair. So close she could feel individual strands moving from the passage. 2 centimeters to the right, and she'd be dead. 2 centimeters, and this story would end here. 2 centimeters, and Klaus Richter would have 95 confirmed kills instead of 94. 2 centimeters, and Soviet forces would lose this sector. 2 centimeters, and everything would be different. But the bullet missed. By 2 centimeters. By the width of 2 fingers. By the smallest possible margin. Natalia didn't think, didn't analyze, didn't calculate, didn't waste time being grateful or terrified or anything except focused on survival. Just moved. Pure reaction. Training and desperation combining into action. She dove left, not backward away from the shot, not to the side, left, toward her rifle, toward the weapon she'd positioned exactly 4 meters away, toward the tool she needed to turn victim into victor, toward survival. She hit the ground hard. Pain shot through her shoulder, sharp, immediate, ignored it. Pain meant alive, pain meant functional, pain meant she could still fight. Her hands found the rifle, muscle memory. She'd positioned it perfectly, knew exactly where it would be without looking, didn't need to search, didn't need to fumble, just grabbed it and swung the barrel toward the church tower in one smooth motion. Through her scope she saw movement. 300 meters away, 3rd floor of the bell tower, a figure pulling back from an opening, retreating into shadow, moving deeper into concealment. He'd taken the shot. Now he was repositioning, moving to confirm the kill, moving to escape before Soviet forces could respond. She had 3 seconds, maybe 4 if she was incredibly lucky. 3 seconds before he was completely hidden. 3 seconds before he realized his shot had missed. 3 seconds before he started looking for where she'd actually gone. 3 seconds before he became unhittable. Natalia didn't have time for perfect aim, didn't have time to calculate wind drift at 300 meters, didn't have time to measure distance precisely using her scope's ranging reticle, didn't have time to account for the elevation difference, didn't have time for any of the careful preparation that made for guaranteed kills, that made for professional marksmanship, that made instructors proud. She had time for one thing, instinct. She pointed the rifle at the moving figure like pointing her finger. Instinctive aim. The kind children use playing with sticks. The kind of shot instructors explicitly forbid. The kind of shot that gets you killed in combat.
the kind of shot that has no place in professional marksmanship, the kind of shot that works maybe one time in 10. Maybe. She fired. The Mosin Nagant kicked against her shoulder. Familiar recoil. The sound echoed across the ruins. Through the scope, she saw the figure jerk, saw him stagger, saw him grab at his chest, saw him fall backward into darkness, into the shadows inside the bell tower. Hit or miss. Wounded or dead. Cover or corpse. She didn't know. Couldn't know. Couldn't see clearly enough to be certain. Didn't know anything except that she'd just taken the most important shot of her life and had no idea if it had connected. She stayed down, prone position, rifle ready, chambered another round, smooth action, automatic, kept her scope trained on the bell tower opening. If he appeared again, she'd fire again. Keep firing until one of them was dead or out of ammunition, or the situation resolved itself somehow. 3 minutes passed. Nothing moved in the tower. No return fire, no movement, no indication that Klaus was still alive, no indication that he was dead, just silence, just stillness, just waiting. 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. The sun was rising. More light meant more visibility, more risk for Natalia, more exposure. Soviet soldiers were starting their morning routines, officers emerging from bunkers, radio operators setting up equipment, forward observers taking positions. If Klaus was still alive, he had more targets now, better targets, easier shots, targets that weren't expecting to be shot, targets that hadn't just survived a near miss by 2 centimeters. But he didn't shoot, didn't engage any of the new targets, didn't take advantage of the opportunities presenting themselves. Just silence from the bell tower, just stillness. 15 minutes after Natalia's shot, she saw Alexei's squad moving toward the church. 8 soldiers, moving carefully, rifles ready, spacing themselves to minimize casualties from potential fire, expecting ambush, expecting Klaus to be alive and waiting, expecting a firefight, expecting casualties. They entered the church, disappeared inside. 2 minutes of silence while Natalia held her breath, while she waited, while she hoped. 2 minutes that felt like hours. Then Alexei appeared at the bell tower opening. He waved, both arms overhead, the signal they'd agreed on. All clear! Target down! Confirmed kill! Natalia lowered her rifle. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, not from cold, from adrenaline crash. From the realization hitting her all at once. She'd just survived something that should have killed her. She'd just dodged a bullet by 2 centimeters. She'd just won a duel with Klaus Richter, the best German sniper in Sevastopol, possibly the best German sniper on the Eastern Front. She'd taken an impossible shot under impossible conditions and somehow, impossibly, it had worked. She'd just killed the man who'd killed Katya, who'd killed Mikhail, who'd killed 19 other Soviet snipers, who'd killed 94 people total, who'd survived by being better than everyone he'd faced, who'd been hunting her, specifically, who'd set this up as carefully as she had, and she'd won. Not through superior skill, not through better equipment, not through following doctrine, through desperation, through willingness to do something so insane that Klaus couldn't predict it, through making herself bait in a way he didn't expect, through breaking every rule so thoroughly that the equation changed, through being unpredictable in a war that rewarded predictability. Alexei's squad brought Klaus Richter's body down from the bell tower 30 minutes later. They carried him on a stretcher improvised from a door, careful even with a corpse, professional courtesy between snipers, recognition that this had been a worthy opponent, someone who deserved respect even in death. Single shot through the chest, just left of center, heart shot. He died quickly, almost instantly, probably didn't even know he'd been hit, just felt impact and then nothing. The kind of death every soldier hopes for, quick, painless, final, no suffering, no agony, no time to understand what was happening. His rifle was still in his hands, Mauser K98 with a Zeiss scope, custom modifications visible even to casual inspection, adjusted trigger pull, lighter than standard issue, modified stock, better cheek weld,
Custom barrel, free-floated for accuracy. This wasn't standard issue equipment. This was a craftsman's tool, a professional's weapon, built specifically for the man who'd carried it, tuned to his preferences, adjusted to his needs. The scope was still warm from his body heat. His finger was still on the trigger. Muscle memory persisting even after death. He died in position, died doing exactly what he'd trained to do, died being professional, died being the best at what he did. Died because for once, the prey had been faster than the predator. They found his logbook in his coat pocket, leather-bound, well-maintained, edges worn from constant handling, detailed entries written in neat script, every kill documented with German precision, name when known, date always, distance measured, weather conditions noted, type of target specified, method explained. Professional documentation, the work of someone who took pride in precision, someone who believed records mattered, Someone who wanted his work remembered.
Natalia read through it while sitting on the church steps, while Alexei's men secured the area, while Soviet officers emerged from bunkers now that the threat was eliminated, while the morning routine resumed. She read about Wehrmacht operations in France, about British soldiers killed in Belgium, about Soviet soldiers killed across Ukraine. 94 confirmed kills, according to his own meticulous records. 94 people who died because Klaus Richter was better at solving the equations of death than they were. 94 families who'd received letters, 94 futures erased, 94 reasons for someone to hate him, 94 pieces of evidence that he was exceptionally good at his job. The last entry was incomplete, written this morning, written before he'd climbed into the bell tower, written before he'd aimed at what he thought was a Soviet officer, written before Natalia had proven that sometimes the prey wins.
November 8, 1941, 05:59 hours. Soviet officer, female, command post area, 300 meters. Wind, light west. Conditions, optimal. Shot taken. That's where it ended. Mid-sentence, mid-documentation, mid-life. The pen had probably still been in his pocket, ready to complete the entry after confirming the kill, after adding number 95 to his tally, after proving once again that he was the best. Except he never got to finish writing, never got to confirm the kill, never got to add Natalia to his list, never got to prove anything except that even the best can be beaten, that even 94 confirmed kills don't make you invincible, that sometimes the student surpasses the master. Natalia was supposed to be kill number 95, was supposed to be another entry in Klaus's ledger, another name, another date, another distance and method and condition notation, another piece of evidence that he was exceptional. Instead, she was the person reading his final words, the person who'd ended his story before he could finish writing it, the person who'd survived because she'd been willing to risk everything on 2 seconds of reaction time and 1 impossible shot. She closed the logbook, looked at Klaus's face. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, maybe 32, hard to tell. War-aged people made them look older than their years. But his hands were steady even in death, no tremor, no shake. His equipment was immaculate even after being carried down 3 flights of stairs. His uniform was clean, his boots were polished. Everything about him suggested competence, professionalism, excellence, someone who cared about details, someone who believed that being good at what you did mattered, even if what you did was killing people. He'd been good, exceptionally good, 94 kills good, good enough that German command had kept him in the most dangerous sectors, good enough that he'd hunted Soviet snipers for months, good enough that he'd killed Katya and Mikhail and all the others, good enough that he'd made Natalia change her entire approach to survive. And she'd killed him. Not with superior skill, not with better equipment, not with more experience, with desperation, with innovation, with willingness to do something so insane that Klaus couldn't predict it, with 2 centimeters of luck and 3 seconds of instinct, with a shot that had no right to connect, with breaking every rule so thoroughly that the equation changed. She'd won, but she'd won by accident as much as by design. And that realization was terrifying,
Because if Klaus had shot 2 centimeters to the right, she'd be dead. If she'd positioned her rifle 3 meters away instead of 4, she wouldn't have reached it in time. If she'd hesitated half a second longer, Klaus would have disappeared into shadow. If she'd missed with her snapshot, he would have killed her with his second. Victory by millimeters. Victory by seconds.
Victoria by the narrowest possible margin. Alexei sat down next to her on the church steps, pulled out a canteen, offered it to her. Water. She drank, realized she was desperately thirsty. Hadn't noticed until now. Adrenaline did that. Made you ignore everything except survival. "You're insane," Alexei said quietly. "You know that, right?" "Probably," Natalia said. 17 minutes. I timed it. You stood in the open for 17 minutes. I've seen people die for standing exposed for 17 seconds. Had to make sure he believed it was real. Had to make sure he'd shoot. He almost killed you. That bullet missed by nothing. I saw the hair move on your head. 2 centimeters, maybe less. But it missed. Alexei was quiet for a moment, drinking from his own canteen, processing what he'd witnessed, processing the implications. Then he said, "You just killed Klaus Richter. Do you understand what that means? He was their best. The Germans are going to lose their minds when they find out. He was legendary, feared. The sniper other snipers were afraid of. And a 24-year-old history student from Kiev just killed him with a snapshot." Natalia looked at the logbook in her hands, at the incomplete final entry, at the life that had ended because she'd been fractionally faster, fractionally luckier, fractionally more willing to bet everything. "I know," she said quietly. Between November 1941 and May 1942, Natalia continued fighting, continued killing, continued surviving. The kill count climbed steadily, inevitably. 64 in October became 127 in December. 127 became 208 in February. 208 became 289 in May. Every kill documented. Every death witnessed by other soldiers who could provide verification. Every bullet accounted for in reports that went up the chain of command. Soviet command was obsessive about verification. Needed proof for propaganda purposes. Needed numbers that could be defended against accusations of exaggeration. Needed evidence. Natalia provided proof. Other soldiers witnessed her kills, confirmed her shots, retrieved German identification papers from bodies, brought back documents, built an unassailable record, made propaganda based on fact instead of fiction. She was wounded 3 more times during those 7 months. December 1941. Artillery concussion. German counter-battery fire, responding to Soviet shelling. A shell landed 10 meters away while she was repositioning between buildings. The blast wave knocked her unconscious, threw her against a wall. She woke up bleeding from her ears. Couldn't hear properly for 3 days. Just ringing. Constant high-pitched tone that made sleep impossible. Medics wanted to evacuate her. She refused, said she could still see, could still shoot, could still fight. Hearing came back gradually, never quite the same, always a slight ringing in her left ear, tinnitus that would last the rest of her life, but functional, survivable. February 1942. Shrapnel to her leg, caught in the open during a German barrage, trying to reach cover, didn't make it fast enough. Shrapnel from an 88mm shell tore through her calf. Multiple fragments, muscle damage, bleeding, pain that made her scream. Medics patched her up, field dressing, morphine for the pain, told her she'd need surgery eventually, told her to rest, told her to stop fighting for at least a month. She was immobile for a week, started walking again after 10 days, limping, favoring the injured leg. Back to combat after 3 weeks against medical advice. Leg would hurt for the rest of her life, would ache in cold weather, would remind her every winter of the price she'd paid, of the cost of survival. But she could walk, could move, could fight. That was enough. June 1942 changed everything. Soviet artillery was bombarding German positions. Standard harassment fire, trying to keep Germans uncomfortable, keep them from sleeping, keep them from consolidating. German counter-battery fire responded, also standard. Artillery duels happened constantly. Background noise of the siege,
Normal, expected. Natalia was in a shallow trench, observing German responses to the bombardment, looking for targets of opportunity, looking for officers, looking for anyone stupid enough to expose themselves during the barrage. The trench was supposed to provide cover, supposed to protect her from everything except a direct hit. The trench wasn't deep enough. German mortar rounds walked across her sector, getting closer with each impact. The crew was good, experienced, adjusting fire based on observation, getting more accurate. The third round landed in the trench 20 meters away. The fourth round landed close enough to shower her with dirt. She should have moved, should have relocated,
Should have recognized the pattern. She didn't move fast enough. Shrapnel hit her face, multiple fragments, cut her cheek open, damaged her left eye, fractured her jaw, blood everywhere. More blood than she'd ever seen from a wound, more pain than she'd experienced from anything. Blinding, overwhelming, total. She couldn't see out of her left eye, couldn't feel the left side of her face. Everything was numb, wrong, damaged. She could taste blood, could feel something wrong with her jaw, could feel pieces of metal embedded in her flesh, could feel her face coming apart. Medics reached her within 3 minutes, thought she'd die from shock before they could stabilize her, thought the blood loss would kill her, thought she was gone. Started treating her anyway because that's what medics do. Treat everyone, hope everyone survives. She didn't die. Field hospital stabilized her, stopped the bleeding, removed the visible shrapnel, bandaged her face, gave her morphine for the pain.
Sent her to the military hospital in Sevastopol for surgery. Doctors operated, removed more shrapnel, reconstructed her jaw using wire, saved her eye through careful surgery and luck. Told her she'd scar badly but she'd survive. Told her she was lucky. Told her most people with facial wounds that severe didn't make it. Told her she was tough. Told her to rest. By the end of May 1942, her final combat tally was complete. 309 confirmed kills. 36 were German snipers. 187 were officers and NCOs. 86 were infantry, machine gunners, artillery spotters. Every kill documented, every death verified, every number defensible. 309 people who died because Natalia Volkov was better at solving the equations of death than they were. 309 families in Germany getting letters. 309 futures erased. 309 reasons for someone to hate her. 309 pieces of evidence that she was exceptionally good at killing. The facial injury wasn't immediately life-threatening. She could have returned to combat after recovery, after the wounds healed, after her jaw finished mending, after the scars stabilized. Could have continued fighting, could have pushed the kill count higher, could have kept killing until something finally killed her. Soviet command made a different decision. She was too valuable, too famous, too important for propaganda purposes. 309 confirmed kills was more than any other Soviet sniper at that point in the war, more than Vasily Zaitsev would achieve, more than any other female combatant in history. If she died now, it would be a propaganda disaster. Better to pull her from combat, use her for morale, show her to the world, prove that Soviet women could fight, build support for a second front. Natalia argued, said she could still shoot, said her injuries were superficial, said one eye was enough for a scope, said Soviet forces needed experienced snipers more than they needed propaganda, said she wanted to fight, said she belonged on the front, said taking her away was wrong. Command said no. Orders were orders. She was going on tour. First Moscow, then Britain, then the United States. Show the Allies what Soviet women could do. Show them that the Soviet Union was fighting with everything it had. Build support, build sympathy, build pressure for a second front. July 1942. Pulled from the front lines. 25 years old. 11 months of combat. 309 confirmed kills. 4 wounds that would scar her for life. 0 losses of nerve. 0 psychological breakdowns. 0 requests to be reassigned to safer duty. She wanted to fight. They wanted her to talk. She wanted to kill Germans. They wanted her to inspire civilians. She wanted to be a soldier. They wanted her to be a symbol. She followed orders. because that's what soldiers do.
August 1942, Moscow. Speeches in halls filled with party officials, meetings with Communist Party leadership, photographs for newspapers, interviews for radio broadcasts. Hero of the Soviet Union Medal presented in a ceremony. First woman in Soviet history to receive it. Pravda ran a front-page article. Lady Death, the woman who killed 309 fascists. Military strategists attended her presentations, took notes when she described her techniques. Dual position traps, decoy usage, psychological warfare, making herself bait. Her methods started being taught in Soviet sniper schools. The formal doctrine began to change, slowly, bureaucratically, but changing, moving away from purely defensive tactics toward the aggressive methods Natalia had pioneered. September 1942, Britain. Met Prime Minister Edward Thornton. Formal meeting in his office. He asked her about combat, about killing, about what it felt like to shoot 309 people. Asked if she felt guilty. Asked if she had nightmares. Asked if she regretted anything. She told him it felt necessary. That was all she could say. Necessary, required, unavoidable. She didn't enjoy it, didn't celebrate it, did it because fascism had to be stopped, because Germans were invading, because her friends were dead, because someone had to fight. Thornton said he didn't fully believe her, said she must feel something more, guilt or pride or something, some emotional response to killing that many people. Natalia said she felt tired, just tired, tired of war, tired of killing, tired of watching people die, tired of being afraid, tired of everything except being alive. October 1942, United States. Met First Lady Margaret Roosevelt. The meeting changed everything. Roosevelt was fascinated by Natalia, a woman warrior, a feminist icon, living proof that women could do anything men could do, that gender didn't determine capability, that Soviet women were equals to Soviet men in every way, including combat. Roosevelt arranged for Natalia to speak at rallies across America, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., dozens of cities, hundreds of speeches. Thousands of people came to hear her, American women especially, women who couldn't serve in combat in the US military, women who wanted to fight but weren't allowed, women who saw Natalia as proof of what they could be if given the chance. American newspapers called her the most dangerous woman in the world. Magazines published profiles, photographers followed her everywhere. She became famous, became a celebrity, became something she never wanted to be, a public figure. American military officers were skeptical of her kill count, questioned the numbers, said it was Soviet propaganda, said no one, man or woman, could kill 309 enemy soldiers in 11 months, said the numbers were impossible, said she was exaggerating for political purposes. The US War Department investigated, cross-referenced her claims with their own intelligence, reviewed German casualty reports, interviewed German prisoners, verified her kills through independent sources. The numbers matched. She wasn't exaggerating, wasn't lying, really had killed 309 Germans, really had done what seemed impossible. The tour lasted 6 months, hundreds of speeches, thousands of photographs, became a symbol, became propaganda, became everything except what she wanted to be, a soldier fighting Germans. She wanted to return to Sevastopol, wanted to go back to the front, wanted to fight. But Sevastopol had fallen in July 1942 while she was recovering from her wounds. The siege had ended. Soviet forces had been evacuated or captured. The city was German now. Her war was over, whether she accepted it or not. March 1943. Natalia returned to the Soviet Union. Training duty instead of combat. She taught at sniper schools in Leningrad, Moscow, Kiev. Hundreds of students over the next 2 years. Taught them everything she knew, everything she'd learned, everything that had kept her alive. How to build dual nests, how to position decoys for maximum effectiveness, how to predict enemy sniper positions based on terrain analysis, how to think like the enemy thought, how to become the predator instead of the prey, how to break doctrine when doctrine would get you killed.
Corporal Vasily Orlov was one of her students. Quiet, serious, absorbed everything, took notes obsessively, studied her methods like they were scripture, adapted them for Stalingrad's urban warfare, used her tactics to achieve 225 confirmed kills. Second most successful Soviet sniper of the war after Natalia. Orlov trained more snipers, passed on what Natalia had taught him. The knowledge spread, multiplied, became doctrine. By 1944, Soviet sniper doctrine had been completely transformed. The defensive, concealment-focused approach was gone, replaced by aggressive psychological tactics, hunting tactics, initiative tactics. Soviet snipers weren't hiding anymore. They were hunting, making Germans afraid, controlling engagements instead of reacting to them. German casualty rates from sniper fire increased dramatically between 1943 and 1945. More importantly, Soviet sniper survival rates increased. They lived long enough to gain experience, long enough to teach others, long enough to make a difference. The doctrinal change saved thousands of Soviet lives, prevented thousands of deaths, made Soviet forces more effective, made German forces more afraid. And it all started with one history student from Kiev deciding to break the rules that were killing everyone who followed them. After the war, Natalia struggled with what she'd done. 309 confirmed kills. 309 people dead because she was better at solving the mathematics of death. 309 faces she'd seen through her scope. 309 moments of pulling the trigger and watching someone die. In interviews conducted years later, she said she'd never enjoyed killing, never celebrated it, never took satisfaction from it. Did it because fascism had to be stopped, because her country was invaded, because her friends were dying, because someone had to fight. She said every kill haunted her, every face she'd seen through her scope. She said she remembered them all. Not their names, she rarely knew names, but their faces, their last moments, the way they fell, the way they died. She married twice. First marriage lasted 3 years, ended in divorce. He couldn't understand what she'd experienced, couldn't relate to what she'd done, couldn't accept who she'd become. Second marriage lasted until her death. Had one son, raised him quietly. Told him about the war, but not about the details, not about the 309. Lived quietly in Kiev, the same city where her university had been bombed in 1941, the same city where Irina had died, the same city where everything had started. Returned to the place where she'd been a student, where she'd had a future, where she'd been someone else. October 10th, 1974. Natalia Volkov died, 58 years old. Stroke, sudden, quick. The Soviet Union gave her a hero's funeral, buried with full military honors. Her obituary listed her as Natalia Volkov, Soviet sniper, hero of the Soviet Union, 309 confirmed kills. Western media barely covered her death. Cold War politics. By the 1970s, her story had been mostly forgotten outside the Soviet Union. Inside the Soviet Union, she remained legend. But the real person had been lost in propaganda years before. Today, Natalia's story exists in fragments. Military histories mention her kill count, cite her as an example of Soviet sniper effectiveness. Feminist writers reference her as proof women can excel in combat. Russian nationalists claim her as a patriotic icon. Everyone has a version of her story. Nobody has the complete truth, but few people understand what she actually did, what her real contribution was. She didn't just shoot Germans. She revolutionized sniper tactics, changed how warfare was conducted, proved that aggression could defeat experience, that psychological warfare mattered as much as marksmanship, that innovation could overcome doctrine, that sometimes the only way to survive was to do the thing nobody expected, the thing everyone said was impossible. Her technique, the dual-position trap with decoys, is now standard in modern sniper training worldwide. The US Marine Corps Scout Sniper School teaches variations of her methods. British SAS includes her tactics in counter-sniper doctrine.
Israeli defense forces study her engagements as case studies in urban warfare. Military academies around the world analyze her innovations. None of them mention her by name. None credit her specifically. The tactics have been absorbed into general doctrine, divorced from their creator. The innovation remains. The innovator is forgotten. At the Central Museum of the Armed Forces in Moscow, you can see Natalia's Mosin Nagant rifle, the same rifle she used for all 309 kills. It's displayed in a glass case with a small plaque. The rifle still has her adjustments, the scope she calibrated, the stock where she carved her initials during a quiet moment in 1942. Next to the rifle is a photograph. Natalia at 24 years old, standing in front of a ruined building in Odessa, rifle in her hands, eyes staring directly at the camera. She looks tired, looks determined, looks unbroken, despite everything. Looks like someone who'd seen things that would destroy most people and survived anyway. That photograph is Natalia's real legacy. Not the propaganda, not the medals, not the 309 confirmed kills, not the newspaper articles or the radio broadcasts or the American tour. The legacy is in her eyes. The eyes of a woman who decided she wouldn't be prey, who decided she'd rather risk everything than follow doctrine that didn't work, who decided her life mattered enough to break the rules, who decided that survival required doing the impossible. Natalia Volkov used herself as bait to kill 309 Germans in 11 months. She stood in the open for 17 minutes while Klaus Richter tried to kill her. She dodged a bullet by 2 centimeters. She took an impossible shot in 3 seconds and won an impossible duel. Almost nobody knows her name today, but you do now.